Today's Total Soccer Show is sponsored by Enclosed, the high-end designer lingerie subscription service. When you buy Enclosed as a gift for your significant other, the lingerie arrives in a very tasteful box. Hence the name Enclosed. So go to enclosedlingerie.com. That's enclosed like E-N-C-L-O-S-E-D. Lingerie, like how the French spell it. It's how Zinedine Zidane spells it. .com, enclosedlingerie.com, and then use the discount code TSS for $35 off any multi-month purchase. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who only does podcasts with English people living in America. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, that checks out. That's the goal.
Right?
It's the long-term goal, yes.
Yeah, so we've had great feedback from Ryan Bailey's shows. Ryan Bailey filling in for me. I've got some feedback for Ryan. Please stop leaving tea bags on my desk.
Especially since we don't even record in studio. It's a really big effort to drive all the way up here just to leave them laying around.
Unnecessary. Unnecessary.
You know, Gary Southgate did want to come on the show, but he doesn't live in the United States, so I had to turn him down.
Fair.
It's a bummer. It was a bummer, but, you know.
See what happens.
Them's the rules.
I step away and we make terrible decisions about guests.
Yeah, that checks out.
But good decisions about co-hosts.
Also that.
Yeah. Today, we have 8 questions to answer.
We do.
8 listener questions. I'm really excited to be back. Really excited to dig into all these questions.
All right, well then, since you're excited to be back, we'll let you go first. Christian Reeves asks, would U.S. soccer benefit from having a national training center and stadium?
In some ways, yes, but I don't think it's worth it.
Agreed. I just have no, in fact.
You just have no?
Answer.
Okay.
Yes.
We should say, full disclosure, Christian, the way he originally phrased his question was, how would US soccer benefit? So,
all right, let me amend my answer. It would not.
Yeah, we didn't really want a leading question, right, to lead the show. But it's worth thinking of as a concept, right? So I'm assuming what Christian is talking about is, we talked about England, so maybe Wembley is England's national stadium. Every England home game, more or less, is at Wembley. And then St George's Park is the training centre in the middle of the country where everybody gathers, right? So what if the US did this? We have one stadium that is all the US's home games, and maybe we'll put the training centre right next to it, and it's this big complex where the national team, the offices are there, and like the U23s meet there, and the U20s meet there, and it's the whole US soccer thing happens at this centre.
All right.
Okay.
So are we going pros first on this one?
It sounds like you want to get to the cons, but let's go pros first.
I'm happy to talk about it.
All right, let me lead the pros then.
Well, no, I can go. So
okay.
I mean, basically, the idea there would be that you have consistency and familiarity. That the players know where they're going. They know either like the hotel they're going to be staying, or if you have built-in facilities, they know where they're going to be. So you don't have to worry about this. Like, oh, I've got to catch this flight to here, then I'm going to meet up with the team here, and we've got to like arrange rides or whatever. You can kind of have all that settled. Then you've got kind of familiar training situations, so you don't have to have any like scenarios in which maybe the field's not as good as you thought it would be, or you're not quite sure, even just where like the amenities are that you need to run a training
Think
session.
of it this way: if US Soccer owns the training fields, then they are fully in charge of the training fields, right? It's not like, oh, there was a lacrosse tournament here last weekend, and we've turned up to train, and the whole thing's been ripped up.
Which I know,
you know what I'm saying? That's an actual thing.
And I know people, exactly. I know people are thinking like, oh, but that doesn't really happen. It's U.S. soccer. Like, no, I think, but like from what I have heard, there are times when they're training, not necessarily like where there's space. It's not like, oh, there's a median here that we can play in, but like they're using the facilities. That parking lot's
almost empty.
They're using the facilities that are
owned by other people,
that are available and owned by other people. And so with that, if they themselves are renting out a facility to use for training, it stands to reason that other organizations are renting out those same fields.
Exactly. And then...
And they're not training on turf as well.
There's the stadium itself.
Yep.
There is, I think, a benefit to a national team having a national stadium in terms of national team players will play regularly at that stadium. You know the dimensions of that field. You know how that field plays. I mean, you know this, right? When you have a home field, home field advantage is not just the fans.
Yeah.
It's knowing the layout of that field.
Yeah.
Right? That is a big deal. Right now, the US plays their games, including World Cup qualifiers and friendlies and everything, all over the place, right? It's just a new stadium every time.
It is. And so with that, then, I think the argument I often hear is like we should like put the stadium in a place that will become a fortress, which, as awkward as it is to begin a show with this conversation, I feel like is a coded way of saying like where there's a bunch of white people who are going to root for the U.S. national team and you don't have, say, a bunch of Bolivians who happen to be living in Philly who are now attending the USA-Bolivia game and cheering for Bolivia.
If you were doing this cynically, you would put the stadium where there were fewer dual national American citizens so that you could guarantee a sort of big US men's national team only crowd, right, with no dual national fans,
which doesn't exist. So there's that.
But there is the idea of a fortress. Yeah, it does have those undertones, right? But it does go back to just like a team having a good home record, essentially. And there is a thing, again, England at Wembley went through long stretches of like unbeaten at Wembley in 20 games. It becomes a thing of like, okay, we're going to that place where we never lose, right? So take all the ethnicity stuff out of it and just think of it as the familiarity and the fortress in terms of we always win here. That builds confidence, like kind of like Columbus was for a little while until Rafa Marquez did that thing.
Yes. But then you realize that stadium would be run by U.S. Soccer, and given the way U.S. Soccer chooses to price tickets, now just imagine the concessions at a U.S. Soccer-run stadium.
Well, here's the thing. If U.S. Soccer built a stadium, U.S. Soccer would somehow have to try and pay for it. I mean, the FA, the Football Association, I keep going back to England because it's the example I'm most familiar with.
Yeah.
Is trying to pay for Wembley for a long time. That's why there's NFL games there.
Yeah.
That's why Spurs are renting it. It's one of the reasons Spurs are renting it, so the FA can make some money. It's why the FA were talking about maybe selling the stadium so they could spend the money elsewhere. We basically can't afford to pay this thing up.
And that's a stadium that, as you said, like the national team uses. With this one, I think if we're not using it, because the issue for me then becomes about disenfranchisement. That if they're playing in one, let's say you put it in Texas, for example, then every single game is being played in Texas. If you put it in New York, every single game is being played in New York, California, whatever. And so then you're basically disenfranchising most of the country, because for them to attend a game, they have to fly to that place and arrange accommodations. And so then the counter-argument could be like, well, they don't have to play every game there. They could maybe travel around a little bit, but then why are you building it? And on top of that, at a time when we're already frustrated with some of the way U.S. Soccer chooses to invest and spend their money, to then spend all this money on a national training center and a stadium and then not use it, that's just an instant hit point that people are going to be frustrated with.
I also did some research just in terms of landmass. So England has Wembley.
Oh, the USA's big, is it?
It is, right. England has Wembley in London. It has St George's Park, which has been a benefit in terms of culture and stuff, apparently, for everybody gathering in the same place, which is in the middle of the country, in Burton. So if you're in Manchester, 2 hours down. If you're in London, 2 hours up, right? Everybody can gather there. England is 50,346 square miles.
Yeah.
Can you guess how many square miles the United States is?
More than that.
More, 3.8 million square miles. Yes. So disenfranchisement, if the stadium is in Texas or Kansas or whatever, if you don't live there, it's a long way to go, right? It's a very expensive plane ticket to go and see the United States play on top of your match ticket. For me, I live... When I'm at home, I don't live in London, but I can easily get on a train and go to London pretty cheaply. It does not work that way in a country with 3.8 million square miles.
I have a hard time getting a train from Richmond to London. It's really difficult to find that one.
It gets wet on the way.
It really does.
Is the problem.
I think if they were to do this, though, it would probably be somewhere on the East Coast, strangely enough, just because I think it allows you to sort of balance out MLS teams being spread around the country with everybody coming back from Europe. I think you'd want it to be on the Eastern Seaboard to kind of cut down
that's the middle,
time. Yeah.
Okokoke.
Yes, perfect. What could go wrong on a tiny island in the Atlantic?
They're like Atlantic Barrier Islands, right?
Sure, perfect. Yeah,
definitely build a stadium there.
Definitely do it.
And if you don't believe in global warming, definitely build a stadium there. Ready for the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, Jesse Frankel asks, if the US were to bring 2 youth dual nationals to the Gold Cup this summer in order to cap tie them, who are you bringing?
All right, I have 2 conditions to this one. One is that I can choose any dual national that's still eligible. 2, they will definitely accept, because both of these gentlemen I don't think are necessarily going to choose to play for the U.S. But if I extend this invitation and they say yes, absolutely, that's what I'm doing.
This is kind of like Fantasy Island, right? Where we're thinking, all right, this will seal the deal. I would say I don't think we should do this. I think you should pick the strongest team for the Gold Cup. But since Jesse has asked us to do it, I'm going to go in there full faith.
All right, and should we say Efrain Alvarez at the same time, or do you want to say that independently?
Yeah, let's say it. Okay. Un, dos, tres. Efrain Alvarez.
Yep. I'm going to muddle off at the end there so you can say it.
Yep. So, Efrain Alvarez, if you're not familiar, LA Galaxy youth product, has played at least 1 game, maybe 2, got that assist, that outside of the foot assist, always does the unexpected, super exciting player, scored just endless goals as a 15 and 16-year-old in USL. He was far too good for USL as a teenager, is now ready to play in MLS. He was with the US youth national teams for a while. He is currently with the US the Mexico under-17s.
Yeah. Slight difference there.
We're really on the verge of losing him.
So
this would be like a last gasp gamble. Get him on that Gold Cup squad.
Yeah, and I do think that on the verge of might even be a little bit generous.
Might be gone.
But I think your idea of like, no, we pick the best squad, I think is probably what they'll do. But I also think from some of the people we've talked to in U.S. soccer over the last like year, 18 months, it also feels like the kind of mentality is one of, no, you choose the U.S. and then we'll play you. It's not that we choose you and try to accommodate you and then you play for the United States.
Yes.
It's like we want you to make the choice first, which I'm not saying I agree with. Issue, I'm saying that that's, I think, their mentality.
We've essentially had Tab Ramos tell us this on stage, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about they want players who want to play for the US.
Yep.
And I still think there's a misunderstanding. Portenorio wrote a really good story about this because Portenorio is Costa Rican and American, right? That when you have two nationalities, you shouldn't have to like choose or make a decision because you are both, right? And so it just depends which federation like gives you the best deal or offers you the most pull. You can't. The federation can't expect you to choose when you're both.
Because it's not like you do have to make a decision at some point.
Yes.
But it comes down to like the point being that like you identify as both. So then it's who makes you feel more appreciated, who makes you feel more involved in the setup, and who do you think is going to give you like the better overall opportunities overall.
Yep, I think that's right. So Efrain Alvarez seems like I mean, we don't know how it's going to pan out, right? But possibly the generational talent that we don't want to miss out on.
Yep.
So that's what I would go with if we're doing this in the Gold Cup.
All right. Who else have you got?
Second choice? I've got kind of a long list and I'm struggling to choose.
I've only got two. All
okay.
Right. I'll go with Kik Piri is the other one.
All right. Kik Piri is a really... Okay, tell me about Kik Piri and why you would choose him.
And for people who aren't familiar, just so you can look it up, it's Kik, and then it's Pierie.
He's in the Scouting Network. I don't think we've got a report for a while, but he's in the Scouting Network.
All right. 18-year-old left-footed center back for Heerenveen, 24 appearances this season, 2 goals. So he has been playing regularly as an 18-year-old in the Eredivisie. I went and looked at a significant number of clips of him. Thank you, Y-Scout. And the one thing I was really impressed by is his ability to play like the kind of balls that we've come to associate with Michael Bradley, those long diagonals over the top into the channels 2 feet.
Yep.
He plays those as a left-footed center back. So it kind of cuts out the middleman of like there were times when I thought he was doing that, like, oh, he's dropping between the 2 center backs to get the ball, then he's starting dribbling up and playing it forward, and then I realized like, oh no, he's just being a center back doing that.
Yep.
And to have that level of distribution would be a very good asset for the United States. That said, 14 appearances for the Dutch youth national teams, so he would have to file a one-time switch, and I think is sort of settled playing for the Netherlands right now.
And what I read, I think his parents are Dutch, and his dad was working in Massachusetts, maybe at a hospital there. I think his dad's a doctor. So essentially, Kik Piri is American because he was born in the United States.
Hey, that's America.
But then they soon afterwards went back to the Netherlands.
Doesn't matter.
Right? So he's eligible, but I think he has a very strong pull
if he can be president, then he can play for the national team. There we go.
Maybe he could do one and not the other.
Yeah.
We'll see. But I like that call because he kind of fits into our lack of left-back depth. And he's also that Daniel Lovitz...
so you're playing him left-back?
Well, left-back, left-centre-back, pinching over in the Greg Berhalter system. Kind of ideal, right? So he might be a really good fit.
Yeah.
How about we go... My other one is going to be someone who is in the system. He's currently playing for the US under-20s, but he is also Dutch. Sergino Dest. Sergino Dest. We've kind of got him, but it's not official yet. And I also think he's someone who I think maybe could just play in the Gold Cup and be plenty good enough.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think he is the one that maybe Travis and I talked about as being a possible like right back center midfield kind of capable of doing both role. So I could see him as like a depth option there for the Gold Cup. And then you kind of get everybody. Maybe if like he does end up like starting for Ajax next season, somebody comes in with a bid. Yep. Maybe the Netherlands look at him and think, or the Dutch FA, looks at him and thinks, yeah, we'll have some of that. So we cut that out right away. I'm good with that too.
Right away. And I just think I honestly think he could survive in the Gold Cup, especially against like weaker opposition. Pretty comfortably. For those who don't know, Sergino Dest, obviously in the Scout Network, he's playing in the 2nd division in the Netherlands for young Ajax. So he's already playing professional games. Yeah.
All right.
You got any others that almost made your cut?
No, just those two really, because I think I'm somewhere in between of like in the past I would get really, really, really excited about dual nationals, and I was always kind of looking at like who else could come through the pipeline.
Yeah, Union Green, Gideon Zalem, so on. Yeah.
But I think it was like a couple different conversations with Brian Charetta actually, who was pointing out that like we do that because we're not as focused on our own development, and it's easier to be like, which really exciting Ajax or Barcelona prospect are we going to get, rather than how do we develop people to then be prospects for Ajax and Barcelona.
Yeah.
So I think I've kind of taken my eye off dual nationals a little bit. Maybe I don't know. Like, I'm assuming Conrad de la Fuente is eligible to play for another national team. I would assume Spain.
I read up. I think he has Spanish citizenship, which is how he was able to be in the Barcelona system all that time. Yeah. But again, he's with the US youth national teams, so maybe we don't need to. Same as Sergino Dest. Maybe we don't really need to worry about him.
I mean,
right?
We don't need to worry until we need to worry. And if you don't want to worry, then call him up right now.
Stop worrying.
Yeah.
Right? Alex Mendez also apparently is eligible for the Mexican national team, but right now committed to the United States. Let's just hope Efrain Alvarez doesn't, say anything to him.
Mm-hmm.
And have you heard of Folarin Balogun?
Of course.
He's
in the Scouting Network.
Of course, yeah. So he's English, Nigerian, and American. I think he's bounced around the English and American youth systems. Apparently, England didn't make the U20 World Cup.
Yep.
Nigeria did, and they're thinking of giving him a call-up.
Yeah.
So he would not be fully. I think you'd have to switch, maybe. I don't know how that would work exactly, but
if you've played for a youth national team in an official competition at any level, then you can still file a one-time switch.
You can, okay. What if you've already switched around? You've played for like England and the US and Nigeria.
I mean, it's called a one-time switch.
Yeah, okay.
So, I think that's it.
So it may be that we lose Balogun if we don't call him up in the Gold Cup if he goes to the U20 World Cup with Nigeria. But again, this is a kid who's scoring a bunch of goals for Arsenal's youth team. We don't know that he's going to be some generational talent.
We do not.
Yeah, so I'm not sure it's worth calling him up for the Gold Cup.
I am not. I'm not either. And
in fact, I'm sure it's not.
And even though we've established that he would accept it in this scenario, in reality, Travis talked about him on last week's Top Drawer Soccer as being a player who I think, if not England, then Nigeria, and if maybe both of those countries somehow abolished soccer, then maybe the US would factor into the equation.
Could be part of the Brexit deal.
Well, I guess they would have to abolish football, wouldn't they?
Yeah. What if they actually abolished football and had to call it soccer? That was the new EU deal.
I mean, you never know. Yeah,
Customs Union, plus you have to call it soccer.
There are so many deals and so many stories about the deals. I don't even know. That could very well be an actual reality, and I just don't know it.
Hey, this is Daryl cutting in with a quick addition. Worth noting, Tim Weah is not officially cap-tied to the US just yet. He could file a one-time switch because he's only ever played in friendlies. But I don't think we need to sort of panic about it because he seems very committed and is not planning to go and play anywhere else. Would you let me have the final word on this?
Sure.
So I understand the idea of calling people up for the Gold Cup to cap-tie them. There's also the CONCACAF Nations League.
Oh, God.
It's an official FIFA competition. We're going to. I know you and Ryan already talked about it, right? We're going to be playing Cuba and Canada. We could call people up and cap-tie them in those games. And we'll see who really wants to go to Havana, play on a rough field, and get tied to the US national team.
Yep. That's a good factor right there. That will let us know who's really dedicated.
Yep.
Next question comes from Eric Myers. In what American city would you choose to live if you based your decision only on that city's soccer culture?
This is a great question, but unfortunately, we haven't been to every city, so we can't give full answers, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to say Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
Total Soccer office is here.
It is.
Richmond Kickers are here.
Richmond Kickers are here.
You and I are here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is this really your answer?
No, not really.
I didn't think so.
But it's not. I'm going to say it's not.
You and I are here. As though
well, for me, you're here, and for you, I'm here.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Makes the show
I think
easy.
within the context of this question, though, I'm pretty sure we would both be moving to wherever the
Oh,
city was.
okay.
Yeah, that's how I'm saying.
Okay.
What, you're just going to abandon me?
Yeah, I'm trying to dodge the question.
Okay.
Yeah, but also give some love to Richmond.
My answer to this ended up being weird. It ended up being a surprise to me.
Is that in Ohio?
What's that?
Weird.
No,
it's in Oregon, right? It's Portland.
I mean, no, it's not actually, because I think the obvious answer to this would be one of the quote unquote big cities. Like when you look at media markets, it's LA and it's New York.
Yep.
And I think
two teams each, two MLS teams each.
Two teams each, but I here's
imagine our interviews. We'd get a lot more high profile interviews because we'd just be in town where there's a lot of.
And I think New York is probably the answer, except that then you go into the supporter culture aspect of one of those teams plays in New Jersey.
Yeah.
One of those teams is having a really difficult time getting its own ground. And I then look at it as and if you want to play see the national team play, they're not playing in New York, they're playing in New Jersey. And is that sort of I'm not criticizing it because I understand how real estate works.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying
it's not hard to get to New Jersey from New York.
Yeah,
right?
but I guess what I'm saying is if I'm choosing a city to live in for the soccer culture, and then having to I think it's basically, I'm not saying it's a cheat of New York or anything like that, but I feel like it would be lame of me to say New York, even though I'm going to New Jersey for the games. It's I'm still commuting to another place to watch the soccer.
Okay.
But I know it gets more into the people who are there, the bars you can go to, the different, if I want to watch, I don't know, Jamaica play El Salvador, I could go to a Jamaican bar and watch that, or an El Salvadorian bar, or a Salvadorian bar, excuse me. But you have that level of sort of diversity in New York that you maybe don't have elsewhere.
New York City also has great sort of pick-up soccer culture.
Yep.
They also have the piers.
Yep.
I can't remember if it's Pier 54. Someone from New York is going to correct me, but there's a place where they have a big sort of soccer complex.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there where you could play a lot more soccer casually maybe than... Actually, we play a lot of soccer here, right? But it's all kind of organised.
We do. I think we're pretty fortunate that Richmond has the soccer community.
All right, my answer's Richmond again then.
Okay, there we go.
My actual answer maybe just for soccer culture is Atlanta, because we've been there a couple of times, right? We're there for All-Star, we're there for MLS Cup, and it just felt to me like the whole city cared about soccer.
Yep.
It's the one place, at least where I've been, where the MLS team gets treated the same as all the other teams, right? Like all our Uber drivers knew that Atlanta United was in MLS Cup and had opinions about the team, right? The stadium is more or less right in the city, right? It's not far away at all. They've got that giant, beautiful new stadium. And it just felt like there was a real, I mean, I'm not breaking news here. People have talked about this for the last year or so. There's a real soccer culture in Atlanta.
There certainly is. Here is where you can go and cue the booze now. My hesitation, I had Atlanta on my short list as well. My hesitation with them was just that they've kind of only known success, that the first year was a rousing success and big attendance and exciting goals and making the playoffs.
Now they know Frank de Boer.
And then, yeah, exactly. And it is, I want to see how it like progresses because historically, all right, again, cue the booze, Atlanta is not famous for having the most like hardcore, enthusiastic, diehard fans. I'm looking specifically at the Hawks and the Falcons. I know people love the Braves, but
that was a critique of why even have a team in Atlanta to begin with.
Yeah.
It was that the fans hadn't got behind the teams that were there.
I'm pretty sure they still have an NHL franchise. I might not be right on that, but again, that kind of is my evidence. And so
they're called the Atlanta. This ice is expensive to maintain.
Yes, that is definitely what they're called, especially in the humidity of July when we were there. But so I guess that's my only thing is I want to see them in these hard times, which they're having right now, which are not very fun.
Yeah.
Did you see Rob Ostrey's tweet about the last time Frank de Boer won a regular season game?
I've seen many Rob Ostrey tweets over the last few days.
Did you see the one that was like
2016 or so?
The last time he won a league game was in Serie A and Joseph Martinez was playing for the other team? Like that.
So it was Inter versus Torino.
I think something like that. So that kind of tells you what they're going through right now. So I would want to see, like, I'm assuming it will continue to be very diehard, very enthusiastic crowds, but it is a relatively new thing in terms of like professional soccer or that level of professional soccer in Atlanta.
Jay Riddle's there, and that's good enough for me.
That is definitely a good point. And also belated happy birthday to Jay Riddle.
Yes.
So, I mean, and I think that a lot of the things that I'm like criticizing could be any city because Chicago, but then they have like the ownership issues, and so then I wonder like do I want to relocate to a city where then there's going to be attendance issues? Like I've never lived in a place where there was consistent sellout crowds at every single game, and that would be fun. I want to go to a place where you've got a packed stadium for every single game, and so some of like that kind of factored into some of my decision making as well.
How about LA? LAFC, the LA Galaxy?
Walkability is an issue for me. Like I like being able to get around.
That's your problem with LA as a whole, right?
Yeah, that's true. That doesn't really relate to soccer culture, I suppose. It probably is Los Angeles because you've got like weather, climate. You can wear shorts and walk to any single bar and watch all these different games, and you still have a lot of the diversity that you would get in New York. So I think that definitely plays a part too.
Just don't go having some famous acting career and then leaving me behind.
I would not worry about that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really, one of my answers, and it's because we've been there and I really enjoyed it, is Kansas City. I thought Kansas City was a very passionate like soccer culture all over the city. Lots of people obviously caring about Sporting KC, but people caring about Swope Park, people caring about the women's team when it was there, and it felt like it was a very enthusiastic soccer culture with also the United States playing there. They're playing there in the next couple months, or I think just played there like a few months ago. So
United Soccer Coaches is there, which is a huge part of American soccer that maybe people don't talk about enough.
Yeah, so you're going to get like a lot of different like soccer in your life in a lot of different ways. And then I guess I keep going back to the city itself. Like the Greenway, I really appreciated about Kansas City. So it was like, I don't know, just different aspects to a city, but it felt like there were, again, lots of places to watch soccer, lots of people who were into soccer, and you would get a very raucous atmosphere at your local MLS games.
There we go. But for now, we're going to stay in Richmond, Virginia.
That works for me. And for now, should we talk about today's sponsor?
Yeah, we shall, because while we're in Richmond, we're going to be reading The Athletic. The Athletic is back as a Total Soccer Show sponsor.
Yours was better.
Specifically, I know you wouldn't let me get to it, right? Specifically, their soccer coverage is what we're really focused on, headed up by the one and only George Qureshi.
But lots of other folks involved, as you said, including Stephen Wood, who we met here in Richmond. Another reason to live in Richmond, even though Stephen Wood does not anymore.
He's from Richmond, but he's gone on to other things, and now he's writing for The Athletic.
He wrote an article about Copa 90's Pivot, is how I'm going to put that one. Not necessarily pivot to video, but just pivot to other things.
They were very much already pivoting to video, right?
Parentheses selling out. And so it kind of goes into their new business model, which is interesting for me because it was so surprising to see like people laid off and then suddenly the video stopped coming. I really enjoyed their was it Rivals? Is that the one where I forget the guy's name who was going around and doing all the different derbies and like
Derby Days.
Yeah, Derby Days. Thank you, of course. And that was I really enjoyed that series, even if I can't remember anything about it.
Yep.
Because I didn't know anything about like the Hungarian derby, and so that was fascinating to me that they stopped coming out.
If you've been wondering what happened to Copa 90 in the past 3 months, why are there no more videos? What has happened? Stephen Wood talks to, I've forgotten the guy's name, but he's one of the executives at Copa 90 and gets into what happened and what they're doing now.
I think it was just a dollar sign with a suit on. Is what I thought it was.
Well, I actually think also the way Stephen wrote it was very good. He wasn't judgmental, but you can make your own judgments about what Copa 90 are doing.
Yep. You can.
Fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would agree with that.
What else we got at the Athletic?
Matt Pazdraowski. He just did a breakdown of the Hugo Lloris error breakdown for the Liverpool goal that won them the game.
Was it as good as yours and Ryan's breakdown? Or
better? It was definitely better because he gets into I have had to play temporary goalkeeper, and so I find it was things that I find myself in that moment being like, I have no idea what I'm doing here, and he kind of very succinctly breaks down that moment of like the ball going across and what you're supposed to do, and then what other goalkeepers do, or in this case, what Lloris did or did not do, that kind of set him up for failure.
Oh dear. Yeah. Also, great US men's national team content. Paul Tenorio, who we mentioned earlier, has a US depth chart out there. If you want to read a US depth chart from Paul Tenorio, who is like a guy who follows the US national team, like he's at all the press conferences, he knows the ins and outs. He's got his depth chart for the US national team. Joe Lowry, Joe and Cleats, Joe Lowry's writing some tactical stuff for them. He's got a really good breakdown of the US versus Chile game and how the US's press was like kind of effective for the first 20 minutes, but why it broke down later on, and Arturo Vidal and all those guys found those holes in the US's defense.
All right.
It's kind of like a condensed version of a Total Soccer Show review, but Joe's really good with screenshots and detailing stuff.
So you got lots of different content of a variety of different styles, and that is one of the many reasons to love The Athletic. But another reason to love The Athletic is because you can get it at a lower rate than you can elsewhere.
Don't pay full price.
Don't do that.
Go to theathletic.com/TSSApril, all one word, TSS April, all lowercase, very important. And you can get 40% off your subscription for a year. That's almost half off. 40% off your subscription for a year at theathletic.com/April, theathletic.com/TSSApril.
There we go.
It's a new promo code. I'm just getting used to it.
Link will be in the show notes.
Link,
of course, easiest way to put it.
Will be in the show notes. And we're subscribers. We read The Athletic. We read the ads because they pay us to read the ads, and it's great, and we like promoting it. But we also read it just because it's good.
We do, indeed. Yeah. So thank you to The Athletic for sponsoring today's episode and for putting out such wonderful content. Daryl Grove, would you like to ask the next question?
I certainly would, and it's from Josh Nagy. Josh asks, if you guys could go back in time to see any player that played either when you were too young to watch and analyse soccer or played before you were alive, who would it be and why? Josh also had a bit of a follow-up. I'm hoping you'll give 2 answers each. He's pushing it, but we'll do it. One big-name player, like maybe Pele or something, and maybe also a lesser-known player who was still quite good. Personally, this is Josh talking, my lesser-known player would be Duncan Edwards.
How do you feel about that?
I'll tell you more when we get to my answers. So, Taylor, who's your big-name player?
I appreciated those clarifications because otherwise I probably would have just done one and moved on. That said, and I don't mean this like to be disrespectful, I put the least amount of effort into this question because I kind of thought about it for 10 seconds. It was like, yeah, those two. And then I just moved on. My answer for the big-name player is George Best. I would want to see George Best play at like the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
Because I think and to be able to go back and like actually watch in the moment because you've got like the ball that is going to be way heavier, and when it's wet, it's going to be like kicking concrete, and you're going to have not nearly as nice technologically advanced shoes, and so just to be able to see how much he stands out in that kind of background, and to see like, oh wow, he's doing this stuff, which because you see now, and he does like this step over, and the guy falls over or whatever, and it's like, yeah, that doesn't seem like it was that impressive given what we've seen kind of in like modern time. To go back and just see how night and day that like technical ability would be, I would very much enjoy that opportunity.
I mean, there's video of George Best, right? But you're saying you want to go and see him.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going back in time to see somebody play, I'm not going to go back and watch video of them. I mean, that's the thing. And like with my second answer, like it's not as though
I missed the go back in time part. There's a whole Back to the Future business.
Yeah, what'd you think? It was like, I mean, you can watch footage of anybody. Yeah. It's not like we're going back to like in the 1898 FA Cup final. There was a man named, I don't know, Sir Lord Alfred Chillingham, I'm sure, is like somebody who was playing there. No, yeah, it's somebody who
he's part of the Conservative government.
that is sounds very accurate, or is a writer for, was it the Evening Standard? I forget who it was.
Telegraph.
The Telegraph.
They had all the double barrel names.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was absurd.
So you go back and see George Best.
Yes. And then do you want my lesser one now, or do you want to go back and forth?
Let's go back and forth,
Okay.
because I did take this a different way, and I thought, like, I'm not disagreeing with your answer, because I understand why George Best would be incredible to watch.
Also, you're not me, so that's
I'm
fine.
not you. But I did think, like, I can watch some video of George Best and get a feel for George Best, sort of. Ferenc Puskás is slightly before that era where there's really good footage of him, and everybody talks about him as maybe the greatest player of all time. And there just isn't the footage, because for the most part, he played for the Hungarian national team. And for his peak years, he played for Honvéd, the Hungarian team. And outside of like that old Pathé News footage that's like sped up and looks all weird, it looks like men running around in shorts too fast.
We need Peter Jackson to get on this one so he can do what was They Shall Never Grow Old. That where like he colorized the World War I footage, which is amazing, by the way. That's an amazing documentary. But
I haven't seen it. You see it?
Yeah, it's like instead of seeing that like really fast marching, they slow it down and they colorized it. So it looks like
it looks natural.
It suddenly looks like, oh wow, that's what World War I looked like.
Yeah.
It's strange to think of it as not in black and white. But yes, we could do the same thing here with Ferenc Puskás.
And I'm saying it for similar reasons as well. You're talking about like George Best pulling these moves that no one had seen before. Like there's a story, there is footage of this, but when Hungary played England in the 50s, Ferenc Puskás pulled off this drag back, and I think it was Billy Wright, the old Wolves captain, just went sliding past him. The phrase was like a fire engine going to the wrong fire. You remember that? So just to see these things for the first time, but I'd love to see. I'd just love to see him in action in a way that you can't right now.
Yeah.
Because even the Real Madrid, so he joins Real Madrid in 58, right? He joins Real Madrid when he's 31. And this is in the 50s. Yeah. So his best years are behind him. He still wins 3 European Cups and 5 La Ligas, but his very best years for Hungary and Honvéd, Ferenc Puskás, you just can't see them unless you go back. I guess I'd have to dip behind the Iron Curtain for a bit. Maybe I'd foment some revolution as well.
Yeah, you better work on your Russian accent. And even then, I think if you're speaking English with a Russian accent, it's probably not going to do well for you.
No, so what I'd do is I'd go see some Honvéd games, and I'd also join the revolution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd be part of the Prague Uprising.
Bye. But I think the other way
the Budapest Uprising.
To reiterate, thank you for the clarification. Like the way I saw this was sort of.
You don't have to defend yourself.
No. I'm not. I'm just explaining it further with my next one. Is that like it's to go back in time and do what we do now? Like I would want to be able to break down George Best, and similarly, this is a guy who like I watched play.
This is your lesser known player.
It's Marco Echeverri. I want to go back because that was when I was like MLS started when I was 12. Like I remember being 14 and watching him, and that's where I think I quoted this the other day, which is maybe why it's in my head. But the idea of like the ball had eyes when Marco Echeverri would play the ball because somehow he found these little spaces and the ball would just get right through there.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, and I remember watching him. But I want to be able to go back and, like, in that moment, see how good that DC team was, similar to what I'd want with George Best and Man United, but also to see how good he is in that moment, but then in context of, like, what I know now.
Yeah.
I would enjoy watching him as, like, an adult with a little bit more of a soccer IQ.
I'd say a lot more. Yeah, we put a lot of work in the last 10 years.
That's true.
So my other answer is Duncan Edwards.
Plus that mullet, chef's kiss.
Yes. Did you get one in tribute?
What, a mullet?
Yeah.
Not intentionally.
Maybe just some days it grew too long. So my answer for the lesser known player, same as Josh, is Duncan Edwards.
All right.
But this is because of a weird local angle. Like Duncan Edwards is from Dudley, which is the area that I'm from. My dad talks about seeing him play briefly. And also it's kind of a tragic story, right? Like he was played for Manchester United at 16, I think played for England at 18, died in the Munich air disaster at, I believe, 21 or so, right? So this is a guy who was supposed to be the captain of England and the central figure for England, probably when they win the World Cup in '66, but his career and his life are cut short. But all I've heard is stories, right, from my dad and from people who've written about Duncan Edwards, about this imposing, I think he played left half, which is like left centre mid, kind of, like imposing figure in midfield who is like this monstrous defensive midfielder because he's gigantic and you can't go past him. But then he's also really like subtle with the ball and really dynamic going forward and like contributes to the attack as well. So I just want to see if the legend matches, if the reality matches the legend of Duncan Edwards. There's literally a statue to him in Dudley that you can go and see, but you can't see him play unless you go back in time.
Duncan in Dudley?
Duncan in Dudley, yeah.
All right. I think it's probably an element there of like you growing up steeped in soccer a little bit more and steeped in that tradition and hearing those stories. I did not have my dad bouncing me on his knee telling me about like Duncan Edwards and the glorious team of 1966.
Right.
Admittedly, that's because my dad would have been, I think, 15 then? 14? 14. He would have been 14 years old.
He didn't bench me on his knee and talk about Marco Echeverri?
Not so much. No, he did not.
The other one, if you don't mind me piggybacking on a different one just to give a different answer to Josh, have you heard of Robin Friday?
No.
So he was supposed to be, I've never seen any footage of him at all, but there's a book about him. Robin Friday was like the George Best of the lower divisions. He played for Reading in the 70s and I think Cardiff, like Division 3, Division 4, and apparently was very George Besty. So
Jack Grealish.
like longish hair and like, all kinds of crazy dribbling and just exciting to watch. So I'd love to go back and see, does that match the legend, or is that just some sort of like cult hero? We've layered too much stuff on top of it and maybe he wasn't that good.
Let me rephrase it. So Lyndon Gooch? Is that a better one?
I feel like you're being mean to Robin Friday.
I mean, shots fired at Lyndon Gooch. You're the one who's interpreting it that way. Any other players you'd want to go back and see?
No, I mean, we could keep listing, right? But we go way too long.
All right,
thank you, Josh, for the question.
I will move us on to Cameron Tattle. I apologize either way. What makes Harry Kane so good? It seems like all he can do is hold up the ball and finish. What makes him world class? And I want to say I love this question because I have wondered it myself, but it's one, we talk about this whenever we do listener question shows, that it's like a question I've had, but I sort of am like, he's just good, and I move on. So to have an opportunity to really think about it and try to figure it out. And I think my answer, I'm just going to give you my abbreviated answer, is that in terms of on-field, not off-field, key point, he's basically Karim Benzema if Karim Benzema were consistent. That's what I'm going to say. It's like he's a consistently performing Karim Benzema. He doesn't have those kind of ups and downs, and he's not necessarily as dependent on the people around him.
That's interesting.
That's my answer.
There are lots of reasons, right?
I'll get into more after that, but yeah, that was
you got more
gist
to say.
Of my answer, yes.
Okay, there's a lot to say about Harry Kane.
Yep.
I don't want to get into the world-class part because I feel like that's a whole thing of what to debate, but I think we can agree that Harry Kane is one of the best strikers in the world right now. So we'll just leave it at that. The reasons why are manifold. First of all is his ability to open a gap and find the target. There are so many times you see Harry Kane just needs one touch to find a bit of space to open that space away from someone. A bit like Gnabry on Virgil van Dijk. I know you and Ryan talked about it in the Netherlands-Germany game, where it looks like Van Dijk's done everything right, but Gnabry just finds a little bit of space and manages to shoot. Harry Kane does that all the time, right? So to say, as Cameron says, all he can do is hold up the ball and finish. I mean, the finishing part is a big key part, right? The ability to finish and the ability to find space to finish where none existed is absolutely incredible.
Because you will see, I agree, because you will see those moments where he's like, it's Dele Alli shoots and it spills back to Harry Kane, and Harry Kane kind of instep finishes it from 15 yards out, or say. And like, you can have those goals and they don't look that impressive, and they're not as impressive as like scoring a screamer from 30 out. But when you do it all the time, it suddenly becomes a more notable achievement. And I go back to like when Chicharito first came to the Premier League and how he kept popping up, and he had like the one where he kicks it into his own face and it still goes in. And you can have those kind of poachers moments. But I think with that, a lot of times you'll see that like he scored 7 goals in 5 games. What a poacher. And then suddenly he doesn't score for like 3 weeks and then maybe has a couple more games. And you can see that, but it's the longevity of it that nowadays Chicharito doesn't do that on a consistent basis. The fact that Harry Kane continues to be able to do that, that's where I look at it, and I think more so it's not just that he's a poacher who gets lucky, it's that he puts himself in a position to read what's going to happen and react to it before other people do. And I say that because he is not like, as we've talked about on the show, he is not the paciest of players. So it's not like, he just gets there because he's really fast and he's able to finish. It's that I think he anticipates a lot, and I think he looks at angles and about spatial awareness.
He's constantly moving and looking.
Exactly, and I think he's able to adjust so that he finds himself in the right place at the right time. And when you do it consistently, it's no longer coincidental. It becomes he's in the right place at the right time because he put himself in the right place at the right time.
So I agree with everything you just said, but I want to underline my original point is essentially that when he's faced with a defender, he has that ability to take like 2 touches, like 1 touch this way, 1 touch that way, and he's opened a gap and then he can shoot, right? So he's got that sort of being in the right place, right time thing, but he's also got if he's faced with a bunch of defenders, he still finds a way to get a shot low into the corner.
I agree. Yeah? I'm hesitant, like the face I'm making, listeners, I was kind of like doing my thinking face because I don't really know how to explain this, but I'm going to try, because going off what you're saying, I agree with everything about like, I agree with everything you're saying about like he does little like touches and little moves to create that little bit of space, that little bit of separation to get that shot off. But I was watching him like highlights of him scoring, and it's not like that tricky. Again, it's not a bunch of stepovers.
It's not 4 stepovers and a back heel, right?
And so I think it just comes down to like an element of self-belief of like, I know what I'm doing. But I think, again, it goes to the kind of awareness in the moment that I don't think he gets kind of caught up in panic. I think he is very calm under pressure and knows, I've done this little step over. Oh, okay. The player bit on that a teeny little bit. Now, these are not the words he's using, obviously, but it's like, he bit a little bit. Now, if I take a touch here, he'll probably do this. And then if he does that, then I'll go back and then I'll get my shot off. And I think he does all of those calculations very quickly, very calmly under pressure. In a half a second, I think he's able to figure all that from like one little read.
He doesn't look like a math genius, but he
does not. He certainly doesn't sound like one either.
Here's the other thing.
He's got the head size of one, though.
Harry Kane is sneaky. Think back to the World Cup. How many penalties did Harry Kane win where he initiates contact with a defender, And then he ends up winning the penalty kick. Harry Kane is sneaky at winning penalties, which you could say that's some sort of moral failing. If you're a Spurs fan or an England fan, it's absolutely wonderful. Got England to the semi-final of the World Cup.
Yeah. Which is an element of being a striker.
Yeah.
You've got to know how to use the rules to your advantage, and you've got to know how to use the moment to your advantage. And if someone's getting a little grabby, and you know there's VAR, then you kind of lean into that, and then you literally lean into that and fall over, and it makes sense.
Lean into some Colombians.
Yeah, but I think but I also want to say that because we talk a lot about, and I think a lot of the coverage of him in relation to why is he so good focuses on his conversion rate in the box and how often he's able to get these goals in the box and his poaching ability. But he can lead that line in the way that one of the reasons why I say he's one of the best forwards in the world is because he's similar to Robert Lewandowski in that to me, in that he's I don't think of Lewandowski as really fast or he does this or he does that exceptionally well, but he still does a lot of stuff really, really well overall to be able to be this top-class striker. And I think of Harry Kane the same as he can lead that line. He can sort of stretch defenses and cause problems, but he can also drop in and link up play and receive the ball under pressure and slow things down. And he can really function as that single striker in a way that we've played 4-2-3-1s before. And how often does that one lone striker just get isolated and then they don't do anything?
Absolutely,
He's really good about never being isolated.
I think that's the key part. And I think it touches on a thing Cameron says. All he does is hold up the ball. And if it was true that Harry Kane just stood next to a centre-back, long balls come into him, he brings it down, holds it up, maybe shields some people because he's kind of big. I mean, that's kind of impressive, but it's limited.
It off, yeah,
that's kind of impressive, but limited, right? But what Harry Kane does is, one, when needed, he knows when to leave the defenders and come 10, 20 yards deeper and connect the play. And what I really love about Harry Kane, especially for England, obviously because I'm a fan, but I see it for Spurs as well, is he'll receive the ball with his back to goal sort of almost in midfield because he's come so deep. He will hold off the defender or the midfielder that's come with him. He will find a way to turn, not quickly. You know what I mean? It's a little bit like a cruise liner, but he will eventually manage to turn, and he will usually play a through ball for maybe Son has run beyond him, or maybe he plays it out wide to a winger, and he will make a move happen, right? So really good example, the first England goal against the Czech Republic in last week's internationals. He comes deep, collects the ball, turns, he slips in a ball for Jadon Sancho, who goes down the right wing, crosses it for Raheem Sterling. Harry Kane wasn't even in the box, I don't think, when that goal happened, but he made it happen by coming deep and connecting play in a way that very few strikers are as good at.
And an analogy that I think works here would be if you're climbing Mount Everest, you have to do base camp, and then you climb up one camp and you go back and you climb up another and you get acclimated to the altitude. And I think that a lot of times with the hold-up striker, it will be long ball into feet, chest it down, hold it up, lay it off for another player, and you sort of have built that next camp. You've gotten to that next camp. And I think Harry Kane is very good. You're right, not as turning under pressure and going at pace at a defense, but I think he's very good about not necessarily needing to get used to the altitude or not needing to build that many levels, that he can drop in, and whereas somebody would just hold it up and wait and then lay it off, he can take a touch, turn, and play a diagonal ball in that you didn't see coming, or he can try to turn on his own every now and then and go at a defense. And I think the variety there makes it less of a build up thing and more of a maybe build up, but maybe also transition very quickly into attack, and now suddenly the defense is completely, if not overwhelmed, then in a state of confusion.
There's an element of surprise. Maybe it gets to the heart of Cameron's question, is an element of surprise. When Harry Kane gets one of those shots away, or Harry Kane gets one of those passes away from in midfield, no one really sees it coming. And I think maybe the fact that he doesn't look capable of doing it physically or something is part of the element of surprise. And because he's not doing anything flash beforehand, you don't think, something magic is coming, but then something magic happens. And that's why he's Sir Harry Kane.
And that's why he's Sir Harry Kane. Next question comes from Sagar Sriramagiri. Imagine we are in 1863 and both you gentlemen are setting up the FA and its rules. Would you still use throw-ins as a way to restart play when the ball goes out of bounds?
Sagar has an opinion on this, it seems, right?
How is it that a game that disallows use of hands while in play allows hands to restart play? Why not, say, a free kick or some form of kick-in?
So if I was going back to 1863 and I was doing the laws, yes, I would still use throw-ins. Yep. I think throw-ins are great for soccer.
Agreed.
If it was a kick-in, the game would massively slow down. You have to put the ball on the floor, and then everybody would get ready, and it'd be hard to find a pass, or you'd end up, everybody crowds into the box, and maybe you got thrown at the halfway line. Everybody goes in the box. It's basically a free kick, right? Where you're going to launch that ball into the box and hope someone wins a header. It's much better to just have someone pick it up, throw it in, we're back in play.
And I would also add, to your point about why it would slow everything down, is that, look at anytime you get a free kick, there's the conversation is that 10 yards? Ref, can I have 10 yards? Can you back him off? Can you back him off? I'm going to paint the line now. We have magic spray for this reason, or is that magic spray when they spray it on the field? Magic spray is the one
that
fixes your ankle, right? But and so that's the difference here is that for me, if you're 2 yards away on a throw in, that doesn't really do anything because I can throw it over you or I can turn and throw it away. But a free kick, you're blocking a lot of what I'm going to do with that kick. So you're going to slow everything down so that the referee has to back everybody off. And
so we agree that for fast restarts, throw-ins were the correct decision in the 1860s.
And it's worth noting here that the more or less the throw-in as we know it today has existed since 1877.
Is that right?
It started out as essentially the kind of before football, before the rules were codified, it goes back to the idea of soccer, rugby, football, all kind of originating in the same sport.
Yep.
And it was, as we've talked about it on another show, when the ball goes out of bounds, it's the first player to touch it. That's why we say the touch line has to put it back into play. And the way you did it was you had where the ball went out of bounds, everybody lined up on one side or the other, depending on which team you were on. Then you had to play it at a 90-degree angle back into the play. You had to throw it back in at a 90-degree angle, and then both teams would go. Yeah, and then everybody would go fight for it.
They still do that in rugby. You know
there you go, yeah.
And they all jump and try and catch it.
And so in 1877 was when I think they were given the freedom to kind of throw it wherever they wanted to based on it going off of the last player. So if it went off on Daryl's team, then I get to throw it wherever I want. Yeah. That's existed since 1877, and I think that's
depends how good the assistant referee is.
Well, that's true. But I think it's because it's the simplest way to restart, and then it does allow a little bit of variety as well, and that's why I do like it, that you can have the person with the long throw, you can get the flip throw in there, which is always exciting, if not as effective. So I would keep it around, yes.
Okay, what if we were to be more generous to Sagar's suggestion, is there a way we could do kick-ins with some alterations to the laws that would still make it fast to get in, but would get the ball on the floor? I mean, because one problem is that the ball ends up bouncing, right, and someone's got to bring the ball down. Could you do a 10-yard exclusion zone, and you can only hit the ball on the floor?
I mean, you could, but again, then you're going to have to paint lines on there to make sure that nobody comes within 10 yards. I guess you could have another line running down, parallel to the touch line, so that people can not to cross that. But even then, where do you come in relation to the field?
You'd look like the edge of a tennis court. Right?
It would. It would be kind of confusing. I think you could go first pass is free rules, but then we know from our adult team when we're doing practices that some people will abuse that rule. And
first pass is free.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to play it 40 yards up the field. No one's allowed to touch it till my striker gets to it, and now you're in on goal. So
I've played it in a very casual tournament around here in Richmond, where the rule was it was kick-ins, but you could only play it backwards, and first pass was free.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
And really, now that I think about it, we do it at indoor. That if the ball goes hits the net or goes too high, you do have a kick in, and it usually is either everybody backs off or you just put it down and play.
Yeah. But that's because you don't serve balls into the box in indoor unless you're a very bad team or have a very good striker.
Yeah, and it's also because it's in the field of play.
Yeah.
And so I think people kind of instinctively know. It is a weird human brain thing, and I might be totally wrong here, but I do think that because the ball's in play, if you've played soccer before, you have this idea of okay, ball's in play, I got to back off, it's a free kick.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's on the other side of that line, I think there's a weird okay, I can block it, I can stop it from coming in bounds. And I think people would do that because it would be sort of permitted until it wasn't.
Thank you to Sagar for the question. We seem to disagree with your opinion, but I hope we gave a really good answer.
I hope so too.
Taylor got some historical stuff in there as well.
There you go.
Good
I do
job,
what I do.
buddy.
I try, Daryl. I try. I like my history.
Today's show is also sponsored by HelloFresh. Hello, HelloFresh. Welcome to the Total Soccer Show.
HelloFresh makes conquering the kitchen a reality with deliciously simple meals. They're a meal kit delivery service that shops, plans, and delivers step-by-step recipes and pre-measured ingredients so you can just cook, eat, and enjoy. And I am very grateful for what HelloFresh provides because what I've come to learn, Daryl, I don't eat enough fruits and vegetables.
All right.
And I think when I'm kind of cooking in a hurry, so say I know I've got to meet you in studio, just as a random example, say it's going to be 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, which is what it was today.
Yeah, well, it was originally 12:30.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Point exactly.
So then I'm gonna if I'm doing research or doing scouting or kind of finishing up some other stuff before I can get on the road.
Yeah.
I'll boil water. I'll throw some pasta in there, and I'll just be all right, I'm gonna have pasta for lunch. I'll make that real fast. Oh, but I'll throw some sauce on it, maybe some salt or whatever. But that's not really great. I'm just eating carbs and sauce out of a jar.
Yeah.
Whereas HelloFresh, in 30 minutes, you can actually eat vegetables. You can actually good food with protein that actually helps you be a functional human.
Well, it's part of the planning aspect, right? Mm-hmm. Someone else has planned it for you and decided this is a balanced meal.
Yep.
This is a tasty meal. So flavors, nutrition, it's all there. It's not Taylor in a panic.
Are you trying to tell me that olives out of a jar is not planning?
I mean, it's a type of planning.
Yeah.
It's bad planning.
It is.
HelloFresh is good.
I can feel myself getting dehydrated.
And the planning goes even further than that because everything's pre-measured, right? So you get the exact ingredients that you're going to use when you make a HelloFresh meal. The meals come together in about 30 minutes maximum, which it's a thing that it says on the box. It's a thing that it says on the card. It's a thing that actually happens when you do it. It really does take about 30 minutes to put your dinner together.
And if you, like me, would like to eat more vegetables, then you've got the veggie option. If you don't want to eat as many vegetables, you can have the classic option. And then if you've got a family, you can have the family option. So they've got you covered in a variety of ways.
And you can also switch around, right? If you decide 1 week I'm vegetarian.
No switching.
1 week I'm,
yes.
1 week I'm a meat eater. Or my family expanded, I need more. You can switch plans if you need to.
So if instead of eating a bucket of pasta, you would rather eat things that will make you feel...
No one said anything about a bucket.
I mean, sometimes you got to eat what's left. You don't want to put like a little bit into it. Like, my wife and I call it the point of no return. You know that when you have the dinner in front of you and you know that if you take one more bite, it's going to be too small of a portion to have effective leftovers.
Yes.
So you sort of am like, well, now I just got to finish the whole thing. Yeah. So we try to do better about recognizing the point of no return on the fly. But if you would like to recognize the wonderful service provided by HelloFresh, for $80 off your first month of HelloFresh, go to HelloFresh.com/Mr. Grove.
TSS80.
And enter promo code TSS80. Once again, that's HelloFresh.com/TSS80. And the promo code is TSS80.
So it's like receiving 8 meals for free because you get $20 off your first 4 boxes.
There we are. Thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's episode. More questions, Daryl Grove, and then some scouting, shall we?
It's a lot of questions, right? I'm excited to get through all these questions. Okay, next question comes from Eric Rosner. Eric Rosner wants to know, what has to happen for England to receive a 5th automatic qualification spot for the Champions League?
Actually, I take my earlier answer back when I said that I put like the least thought into George Best and Marco Echeverri. This one I answered very fast because I think I just genuinely know the answer.
Okay.
It's the threat of the European Super League. It would basically be the Premier League saying, we're going to start our own league unless you give us more Champions League spots. Basically, if big clubs, bigger leagues said, we want more spaces or we're going to start our own competition, I think UEFA would probably have to sort of bend the knee a little bit and be like, all right, fine, England gets 5 and now Turkey doesn't get an automatic spot. Okay, Germany gets 5 and now whomever else doesn't get the automatic
It is kind of what happened recently, right, where a lot of the big nations would receive like a 4th Champions League spot that you had to go through the qualification process. Now in England and the other big nations like, say, Germany, every team, the 4 teams go directly into the Champions League group stage. And that was part of the deal that was struck to get some of the smaller teams in as well. Right?
I did, when I first saw
I will say, I took this question a completely different way, so I have a completely different answer.
And I can tell, I'm going to guess what you did, and maybe I'm totally wrong, because it's the way I first answered it was like, what would happen for England to get a 5th Champions League spot? As in, next season, how could England get 5 teams into the Champions League?
It could happen.
It could.
It absolutely could happen. So if any of those teams that are still in the Champions League wins it, so what, Man City, Man United, Spurs, Liverpool. If one of those wins the Champions League but doesn't finish in the top 4, that's an extra Champions League spot.
I don't think City and Liverpool need to worry about that.
This is true. Or if who's still in the Europa League? I believe Arsenal.
I think Chelsea's in there, maybe.
I think just Arsenal is still in the Europa League. Yeah. We'll put a question mark on Chelsea. I'm pretty sure it's just Arsenal still in the Europa League. If Arsenal win the Europa League and don't finish in the top 4, they also get a Champions League spot. So you can have 5, but you can't have 6. So if all of those things happen, let's say a team that wins an English team wins the Champions League that isn't in the top 4, an English team wins the Europa League but isn't in the top 4, you've got 6 people who think they've qualified for the Champions League. What actually would happen is the 4th team, the team that finishes 4th in the Premier League, would be bumped down to the Europa League. Because the UEFA rule is we'll let 5 teams in from one nation if they win one of the trophies. We can't do 6. It's just pushing it too much. Yeah.
Which is still, I would say, progress, because there was the year, maybe when Chelsea won the Champions League, I think, they didn't finish top 4, so Tottenham, who did finish 4th, ended up losing out on the Champions League spots.
So I think this time round that would have worked out for Tottenham. Yeah. But unless there's also the Europa League rule. Yeah. So it could happen to Tottenham again.
It could happen to Tottenham again. It probably won't, but it could.
Harry Kane deserves the Champions League. Maybe Spurs will win.
Got nothing to do with it.
Maybe they will win the Champions League with Harry Kane leading the charge. Maybe. Did that make sense, everything I just said? Because I feel like it's semi-complicated, even though it actually makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, if top 4, go.
Yeah.
Champions League winner automatically qualifies. If Champions League winner isn't in the top 4, Champions League winner automatically qualifies. So then there's 5 teams going from England. If an English team wins the Europa League but doesn't finish top 4, then they get to go to the Champions League. The team that finishes 4th drops into the Europa League.
But not just for the Europa League. That's only if the Champions League and Europa League teams are both English, right? That's where it gets complicated. Yeah. Okay. I feel like we nailed it. Also, I feel like we answered that question both possible ways it could have been answered.
Yeah. That works. Which leads us to our final question, which comes from Jacob Hirsch. Could a full England U20 squad survive relegation in the Premier League? I'm glad that we're beginning and ending this show with me saying no.
It would be nice to think that England is so full of talent that an under-20 team could survive relegation, meaning, I assume, could play in the Premier League for a season and not get relegated. The answer is no when you look at the players available, right? They'd maybe be exciting to watch. They'd give it a good go, but they would not be able to compete with 17 other teams in the Premier League.
No, they would not. And I think if you look at the most recent U20 squad, I'm not even sure when it was from. I think 8 of the players in that squad were playing in the championship, which I think is rather telling. And then you have certain positions like goalkeeper as an example where maybe there's a few spots where Jadon Sancho and Phil Foden would be on this team, Callum Hudson-Odoi. Suddenly it's a little bit more exciting.
Yeah.
But you still have spots where maybe it's unproven players who haven't quite gotten the match experience that you would need to stay competitive in the Premier League.
It's worth noting the England under-20 team this time.
Callum Hudson-Odoi hasn't even started a Premier League game yet.
There you go. That's the example of where he's at, right? So England under-20 team actually didn't qualify for the under-20 World Cup. So if they couldn't do that, maybe they wouldn't survive in the Premier League. I actually thought of maybe if we push this up a little bit and said the England under-21 team, is that a little more generous? Because then you can include guys like Declan Rice or Dom Solanke, Tom Davies, maybe. You could have a slightly stronger team. And I thought, as a thought experiment, to try and push it a little bit further. Still not good enough. And it's still mostly the defence. And I think it's essentially Premier League teams don't trust young defenders unless you're sort of exceptional, world-class exceptional. So you just don't have guys with enough Premier League experience. Declan Rice would have to play centre-back, essentially, for this England under-21 team.
I think if you did the U21 team, the best-case scenario is maybe Huddersfield last season, and I think the worst case scenario is more like Fulham this season. Just sort of trying something and just being all over the place and getting shredded a bit.
Ryan Sessegnon is a good example because he's on that Fulham team this season. So it would have a lot of names, it would have a lot of excitement. Jadon Sancho, for example, but it's a lot of players that would get relegated and then get signed by other teams next season.
I don't want to do this now.
Right?
Yes, I agree. I don't want to do this now, though, because we've gone long as it is. We still have scouting to get to. But I did find myself wondering, what is the lowest ranked FIFA national team that could survive a Premier League campaign, which is maybe a conversation for another day.
Question. Yeah. I don't know, but it's a great question.
There we go. Well, maybe one for another day, but instead of that, should we move on to some scouting? But I suppose first we should say thank you to everyone for their wonderful questions.
Yes, thank you to everybody for the questions. If you have a question to ask us, please go to totalsoccershow.com/questions. totalsoccershow.com/questions. Link will be in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, if you support the show at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month when we do the listener questions special. totalsoccershow.com/join to sign up and support the show.
And what happens if you support the show at $5 a month, Daryl?
You join the scouting network.
Yeah, you do.
And we give you a young player to keep an eye on and send us reports. And then we read those reports in the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network segment.
Which is what we're going to do right now.
What a coincidence.
Oh, shocker. Starting with Anurag Anjaria scouting Andrea Novakovic, the 22-year-old American striker on loan at Fortuna Sittard from Reading. Novakovic now has 3 goals in his last 4 games as he grabbed a poacher's goal against Willem II over the weekend. He reacted...
Does that mean it was illegal?
Yes, I think so.
A poacher's goal means it was out of season, but he still managed to do it.
No, you're just, Berbatov. Berbatov's a poacher. I'm hoping Andrea didn't smoke quite as much as Berbatov. He reacted quickest to slot the ball home from 6 yards after the opposition keeper spilled a direct free kick. It wasn't enough as Fortuna shipped 3 exclamation point penalties in a 3-2 loss.
I think 3 penalties should have an exclamation point.
It certainly should.
Alex Trammell is scouting Gianluca Busio. I know what he did this weekend. 16-year-old American midfielder for Sporting KC. Alex says that Gianluca Busio subbed on in the 62nd minute in Sporting KC's 7-1 win over the Montreal Impact.
Decent.
He had a good, not great game as a substitute and scored his first ever home goal after an interception at the top of the opponent's box, slotted home nicely to put Sporting KC up by 6. Yeah, I can't remember who it was. There's a Montreal defender. He's just dribbling along thinking, nothing bad can happen. Busio's on him, takes the ball, bang, goal.
And then 7 bad things happen. Daniel Jones scouting Cody Cropper, 26-year-old American goalkeeper for New England. Cropper was a surprise starter in New England's 2-1 victory over Minnesota United. That victory was also fairly surprising. Winless in 4 games, head coach Brad Friedel made several changes in the starting 11, including starting Cody Cropper, who had not played in nearly 18 months. He did pull out 2 good saves in the win.
Good news is they won, so no one had to beat them up in the parking lot afterwards. Philip Andriani is scouting Andre Green, the 20-year-old English winger for Aston Villa. Philip Phillips says Green seems to have established himself as a regular in the first team and is the second choice winger behind Dutchman Anwar El Ghazi. Because of that, he's switched from the left as his inverted winger to the right. He hasn't seen as much success, but he's looked dangerous and did create a few chances in Villa's 2-1 win over Blackburn. Villa are going up that championship table. Andre Green was injured for a long time. I think he maybe had a broken leg, so this is great to hear that he's back.
Derby County also going up the table. Robert Newman scouting Mason Mount, the 20-year-old English midfielder, on loan at Derby County from Chelsea. Mount's return from injury to the Derby team could not have gone better. Derby thrashed Rotherham United 6-1, giving them a tenuous grasp on sixth place in the championship. Mount himself was phenomenal, winning a penalty that led to the first goal, scoring the third, and assisting the fourth.
James Chocker is scouting Dwayne Holmes, Twitter famous Dwayne Holmes, the 24-year-old American right midfielder for Derby County. James says Dwayne had an assist and a goal in that 6-1 rout of Rotherham. His curling right-footed cross onto the head of Martin Waghorn and his first-time redirect of Mason Mount's misguided header helped propel Frank Lampard's squad back into promotion playoff spot. His most important action likely came in the 27th minute when he twice denied Rotherham's Ajayi on the goal line to preserve a 1-0 lead. Two goal line clearances, likely changing the complexion of the rest of the game. Twitter remains abuzz as to whether or not he'll get a call-up for the US national team sometime soon.
We will talk more about that when we get to the next international break. But for now, we're instead going to talk about John Bowers, scouting Frankie Amaya, 18-year-old American midfielder for FC Cincinnati. Frankie has not played for FC Cincinnati yet. He was selected for the US U20 squad that played games in Spain last weekend. He started and played the first half against France, subbed on for Alex Mendez in the second game against Japan.
Ed Ritter is scouting Ben Mines, the 18-year-old American striker for New York Red Bulls 2. Ed says Ben got his first start of the season in Red Bull 2's 3-2 win over Memphis 9-0-1. Ben looked lively and had a lovely cross that was hammered home for the first Red Bulls goal. However, he exited the game in the 35th minute after a knock to the leg.
He did. Daryl, I was about to mention this upcoming scouting report to you earlier. I've got bad news for you, my friend.
What's that?
Ian Shanks, scouting Fernando Arce Jr., the 22-year-old midfielder on loan at Dorados from Club America. Note that I didn't note his nationality. Arce has come out publicly to say he's interested in switching from the U.S. to Mexico for international play.
Can I change my Gold Cup answer?
There you go. He said in an interview that he has not been in contact with the United States Soccer Federation since playing in the 2015 U20 World Cup. Arce says he wants to follow in his father's footsteps to play for El Tri and current coach Tata Martino.
Hire one person who's in charge of sending text messages to dual nationals.
I mean, it seems like a good idea. It seems like it would be an easy thing. In fact, hire Daryl Grove. Daryl Grove sends lovely text messages. They're informative. They're to the point. They're not my random ones at 2 a.m. It's like, hey, did you see that weird episode of 30 Rock? Daryl Grove's on point, to the point. Hire him, US Soccer.
Have to maybe learn a second language real fast. But Brandon Colvin is scouting Brahim Diaz, the 19-year-old Spanish winger for Real Madrid. Brandon says, almost 3 months after joining Real Madrid, Diaz made his first start for Real Madrid, contributing an assist in their 3-2 win over Huesca. In his 63 minutes on the pitch, Diaz was lively and aggressive. His short passing and interplay on the wing kept Madrid's attack humming, but his dribbling was often snuffed out by tackles in the final third. The assist resulted from one of the encouraging occasions when Diaz picked his head up, found runners in the box. It seems like Zidane's return to the bench may result in Brahim Diaz finally getting the regular playing time promised to him upon signing.
Until next season when Zidane gets his, I believe the story is now 14 different signings that Real Madrid will be making. We'll see how it goes. James McRae scouting Rei Hirakawa, 18-year-old Japanese midfielder for FC Tokyo. Rei started 2 of 3 matches for the Japan U20s in their recent World Cup warm-up friendlies. Rei got on the score sheet in the final game against the USA with a near-post header off of a free kick, leveling the score at 1-1. Rei has seemingly solidified himself for a spot of the U20 roster at the World Cup in Poland in May.
World Cup's coming. U20 World Cup's coming.
Lots of tournaments are coming.
Oh,
Also winter coming.
Is it?
I mean, in terms of HBO shows, yes.
Oh, and also I guess it's always coming.
Also that, yes.
Eric Edston scouting Callum Hudson-Odoi, the 18-year-old English winger for Chelsea. Eric says Callum's continued great performances in the Europa League for Chelsea have given him the opportunity to get his first senior team call-up for England. He became the youngest ever player to get his first cap for the men's national team against the Czech Republic and then added his first start and assist in the second game against Montenegro.
This next report confused me. I don't know why it just did. Guy Edweb scouting Serge Gnabry, 22-year-old German wide forward for Bayern Munich. Scouts from AC Milan were in attendance at Germany's victory over the Netherlands, and is rumored that the club will put together a big bid in the neighborhood of 50 million euros to sign Gnabry from Bayern this summer. Well, this might make sense for Milan. Guy says he doubts it would make sense for Gnabry or for Bayern. I would agree with that.
Yeah, Gnabry's where he needs to be.
Yep,
right?
I would agree.
Oh, the Callum Hudson-Odoi report just reminded me, Chelsea are in the Europa League. I apologise to any Chelsea fans who I may have angered in the last 20 minutes.
The Europa League gods are coming for you.
They sure are.
As soon as the Champions League gods tell them they're allowed to.
Are they one of the new American gods?
Yes. Why not?
It's Neil Gaiman's sequel. Julie Nishimura Jensen is scouting Alan Halilovic.
Can we just note the fact that he named one of the characters Low Key? Like, of course that's Loki. Like, who else would it be? Like,
spoiler alert!
That is
spoilers.
Is it a spoiler alert? It's like, come on, man. Like, I feel like I've read that book. I enjoyed that book. He really did like the minimum amount of work. Like Mr. Wednesday. Like, I wonder who that could be.
It fooled me.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't get it.
Did you really not?
I didn't get it. No, I didn't know. I did not know. Also, I read the new one and the Europa League guard. No idea who that could be. Could have been anyone. Julie Nishimura Jensen is scouting the Thursday night guard. Thursday.
Yep.
Alan Halilovic, the 22-year-old Croatian midfielder for Standard Liège. Since making a loan move from Milan to Standard Liège at the end of January, Halilovic has regularly appeared as a 70th minute or so sub. More excitingly, he started for the Croatia U21 team in their friendly against Italy, scored a 58-minute goal when his side was 2-0 down, sparking a comeback that ended 2-2. How about that?
How about that? So thank you to everyone who submitted their scouting reports. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you again to everyone who submitted their questions. We appreciate that as well. If you're wondering why Daryl and I have maybe accelerated the pace of our talking, it's because the TSS Derby is currently happening.
Yep.
And right now I am currently inclined to talk about it.
Yeah, so it's Wolves Man United. We're going to end this show. We're going to publish the show. We're going to watch that game.
We are.
So Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, and worst of luck in the TSS Derby.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.